Hello everyone, and sorry about no videos for the past day or two. I was at a wedding, and then the day after we had a get-together, and it was, it took a lot of my time, and then when I got back home I was watching the Lichess titled Arena, so I really didn't have time to do it. I mean, I could have done it, but I didn't feel like doing any videos, so I thought best not to do it if I don't feel like it. But that's why we're gonna do at least 2 videos today. So this is one game from the Lichess titled Arena I really enjoyed. Some of you have requested it already, as it really is a fine showing by both players. Here, Carlsen, Dr. Nichterstein faces Turkish Grandmaster, 21-year-old Grandmaster Vahap Sanal, and it's really a wonderful game, so let's just dive straight into it and see what happens. So Carlsen with the white pieces opens with G4. We have the Grob. Black replies with E5, and here D4, just attacking the center. We have E captures on D4, and now knight to F3. There's no rush in capturing the pawn. And here C5. There actually is one game in the database where bishop to B4 was played, but here C5 is a new move, and interestingly, as of move 3 already we have a completely new game. So Carlsen continues attacking the center, a nice flank attack with C3, we have D captures and knight captures. So here Carlsen is down a pawn, but he already has 2 pieces out. It's a nice trade-off. We have D6 by black, and now G5, not even going for more development. Carlsen prevents this knight from developing. He can't go to F6 or to H6, and if he goes to E7, well then the bishop will have a pretty hard time getting out. So here black has to figure out how to develop. First we have knight to C6. Carlsen strengthens the G5 pawn. We have H4 and now knight to G to E7. This knight is now coming to F5, and only then will the bishop be developed to E7 and black will castle. We have bishop to G2 and now knight to F5. We're not going to overanalyze anything as this is a bullet game, but the positions that come up in this game are so interesting that I just had to show it, and we're just going to use it as target practice for your tactics solving prowess. So bishop to F4, Carlsen develops, putting pressure on the D6 pawn. With bishop to E7, black prepares to castle, and now E3. Before Carlsen decides where he's going with the king, he's taking away the D4 square from the black knight. We have castles by black, and now even A3, taking more important squares from black before deciding where to go with the king. Bishop to E6 by black, and now queen to C2. A very nice idea, because here black could have some knight A5 to B3 ideas, or even bishop to B3 could be an idea. But here with queen to C2, Carlsen solves all of his problems, because now any knight A5 followed by bishop to B3, you can't do that because the bishop has to keep an eye on the knight on F5. So D5 by black, preparing D4, and here Carlsen just plays rook D1, still not doing anything with the king. With D4, attacking the knight and preparing to open lines. Of course, not now, as the queen is still on the d-file. Carlsen just castles, as there is no danger of any captures. And now queen to c8, getting the queen out of the way, and now, well, d captures on c3 is a threat. We have e4 by Carlsen. And now, of course, it's a bullet game. You don't have a lot of time to calculate all of the captures, so black just decided to capture. Even though knight captures on h4 was an opportunity to grab yet another pawn, as this threat still exists here. But okay, black decided to trade off. We have d captures, pawn captures on f5, bishop captures on f5. Carlsen's queen, Sanal's queen nicely defends the bishop on f5 with queen captures on c3, and now bishop to h3, hoping to get some traits here, but Carlsen not interested. He goes knight e5, with bishop captures on g2, king captures on g2, knight captures on e5, bishop captures, and queen to g4 check. Here Carlsen just blocks with the bishop, as you also have to defend the h4 pawn. You could also block with the queen, but Carlsen prefers to keep the queen on the board for now. And here, while you could start bringing your other pieces into the game, here we have queen to e4 check, and here Carlsen now offers a queen trade. We have queen to f3, and now queen captures. We have king captures, and now, Carlsen still doesn't have any great compensation for the pawn. Black is up a pawn, and Carlsen is a little bit better on time. Although one could argue in bullet a little bit better on time is much better on time, but still, it's hard to justify this pawn here. But, you know, this is bullet, we're in for the fun, so why not just enjoy it. Rook 8 to d8 seems like the way to go, but Sanal goes for rook f to d8. He creates space on f8 for his king, as he will have to defend the bishop. Carlsen doesn't want to trade, as he's down a pawn. We have rook to e1 attacking the bishop, and now king to f8. Rook to e4, now gaining a lot of activity on the fourth row, and now comes rook to e1, doubling up on the e file is the idea. Rook to d3, black wants to do the same, he wants to double up on the d file with king to g4, and now rook 8 to d8, nicely doubling up on the d file, and bishop to e5. Now Carlsen transfers the bishop on this much more useful diagonal, but also the bishop will be guarding the b2 pawn. With f6, pushing the bishop back, bishop to c3, and now rook 8 to d5, with a triple attack against this g5 pawn here. So Carlsen has to do something about it. First, rook to f4, pinning the pawn, as the king is on f8, black is unable to capture. And now here, if this was a classical game or even a rapid or blitz, black would probably continue, you know, just playing on the queen side, enjoying his extra pawn. But it's bullet here, black decides to go for something special with h5 with check. Asking Carlsen, do you want to mess up your pawn structure by playing g captures on h6 en passant, or do you want to play capture with the king and then maybe compromise the safety of your king? Carlsen says, I'm not afraid of this. We have king captures on h5 and now king to f7, and here rook to e1, just putting pressure on the e file. And here you have to be very careful what you do, because here rook to e1 pretty much loses the game for Carlsen, but it's a bullet game and it's a really hard move to spot. But you know, you're at home, it's a nice Sunday, you're enjoying yourself watching this nice video. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the idea Sanal missed in this position. It's a very nice idea. While I have a nice sip of my water. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent solver of tactics on a Sunday. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, bishop to d6. It's more of a just get your bishop out of e7, so white doesn't have this nasty capture. But also you're attacking the rook, and here white will just have to give up the rook. If you move the rook, let's say rook fe4, then you get g6, and then you're in trouble. Because if you go to g4, now due to the bishop controlling this diagonal here and the rook controlling the third rank, f5 is checkmate. So this is one problem, and if you don't go, if you go up the board, king h8, then you get rook captures on g5, a very nasty idea, and you don't really have anything to do here. You can, I mean, rook h5 will be mate, so you can just capture, and then rook h3 leads the mate, rook h4 captures, again, is checkmate. So here Sanal missed a great opportunity to punish Magnus for his, play with the overactive king and this rook e1. But he didn't. He played g6, seemingly the idea is the same, but it's not. King h7 by Carlsen, and now the problem is, if you go rook g5, like in the line we've shown, now Magnus has rook captures on e7. You just get the king out of the way, and then rook captures on f6 will pick up the rook here, whatever you play, king e6, captures here, and you're just down a piece. Also, everything is nicely protected, so white would be completely winning here. So it's similar, but not quite the same. After Carlsen's king h6, we have bishop to f8 check, getting the bishop out of the way with check. It seems like everything is going, according to plan. King to h7, and now again, you don't have the option of doing any sneaky tactics like this, because then Carlsen has rook 8 captures on f6, and now this is checkmate, as the rook controls this line, and the king prevents the black king from moving, of course. So even though you got your bishop out of the way with check, you don't really have any defense left on your f6 pawn. So here we have f5 by black, and now Carlsen plays h5. Now it's Carlsen who threatens mate. H captures on g6 will be checkmate, as again, now the white king is preventing the black king again, and the rook is still controlling the e file. So rook to h3, the only move black has. Now the pawn is pinned. Of course, you cannot capture. We have h6 by Magnus. And here, again, if this was some normal game, black would play b5, continue playing on the queen side. But here, black wants to finish Magnus. We have rook to d7, now preparing some nasty ideas. And you have to be very careful. So what do you do here? If Carlsen played a slow move like bishop to f6, then black's threat was bishop captures on h6. This was the idea. And after g captures, king captures on f6, and there's nothing more for white to do here. it's check, a discovered check from the rook. You have to move the king. Now you get the rook d8 check. King has to move back, and now rook captures on h6. This was the plan. King captures, rook to h8 will be mate. Of course, the king blocks white king's retreat to any square. So this was black's plan, but Carlsen, of course, after rook to d7 doesn't play a slow move. In fact, Magnus finishes the game, as now white has a winning idea. So feel free to pause the video and try to find this nice winning idea. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding the mate in 2 on this lovely Sunday. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, now it's rook captures on f5. This is what Magnus played, and this ends the game. The black king still can't go anywhere. Rook controls here, bishop controls this diagonal, king controls g8. So your only move is to capture the pawn, which is what black did. And now, of course, comes g6. Black king has no squares, and of course, it's checkmate. So really a wonderful game by both of them. And I know we don't overanalyze bullet games, but you know, the positions that arise are so interesting. We can use them as target practice, so to say. And the one more interesting fact: by winning this titled arena, Carlsen is now in 2019 undefeated in every tournament that he played in classical time format, but also in bullet time format. So he won all classical tournaments he played and all bullet tournaments. And here are the standings of the Lichess titled arena. Again, it was a race between Magnus and Andrew Tang, also known as the Penguin. So Magnus first place, Penguin second place, and GM cashing third place. I have no idea who that is. If you do know, share in the comments. Magnus finished with a performance of 3,049. That is very impressive, with a win rate of 75%, and he even berserked some of the games. Penguin with a performance 29.51 with 64% rate and 10% berserk rate, and we have GM cashing with 28.05. And then we have some of the other guys. GM Lion Ted, I don't know who most of them are, as every title arena there are more and more grandmasters applying. GM Wizard 98, International Master Boss 1005. The Chess Bros, also not sure who it was, but due to the high rankings, probably Eric. Then we have EM Terry R2, then Lord Like Frederick, and then GM TGK59. So those were the standings, and I do hope you enjoyed the game. Like I said, we're gonna have at least one more video today, finishing up the Capablanca's match with Bora Kostic, so prepare for that. And I would like to thank Rich Piper, Johan Achlef, Nicholas Padao, Paul Jacobs, and Derek Bokelheide for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully with some more interesting content. So yeah. That's pretty much it. Thank you all. I will see you soon. Have an excellent rest of your Sunday.